Distance now as the riders continue. Looking right up into the distance there, we can see the remnants. It's probably Vogel's trying to get across here.
In fact, that's Franco Ballerini's group coming across now with Tom Steele, so they've almost closed it down on the two leaders.
That's right. I've forgotten we got to the front then, Paul, but that's right. And these three are coming up now, so the gap was 52 seconds. It looks to be, what, 30 seconds now? And this is going to be an amazing chase back too for Steels and Rick, because they must have thought their chance of heading this race again had gone today. But up comes an express train in the form of Franco Ballerini and carrying them now up towards these two leaders.
Ludo Dieriksen must be very happy that he's changed off the smaller teams that he represented over the last few years and now riding on top of the first division squad Lotto. It gives him a chance to race with men like Andre Schmeel, and this afternoon he's certainly waved the flag for the Lotto squad. But now he must realise that things are about to change, because the race is becoming a much more critical event now, because the riders starting to come into the crucial closing stages of Paris-Roubaix, and coming up from behind pretty rapidly indeed is Franco Ballerini, and not far behind a very strong group with Frédéric Moncassin.
And if they all get together, it'll be the status quo, and they'll all have to start and try and work out the tactics once more, because some nasty stretches of cobblestones very much still remain here as we get into the last 50 kilometres of the race. We've crossed the town of Atiche and we're now heading down towards the next sector of Pave.
These two riders still will not give up. They're still surviving. Looking over the shoulder now, they can see just at the end of the straightaway behind them Franco Ballerini, Tom Steels and Michael Rich. And they go in now to the next section, and it will be interesting to see just how powerful Franco Ballerini is and if he's going to close it down personally on the two leaders.
Well, Rick is not at all happy on this section of cobblestones, and neither is Tom Steels. But you can see from the helicopter now, that's in the middle of the picture, is Ballerini. He has catapulted across. Tom Steele's off to our right, but Ballerini has flown and caught the two leaders. So we now on zone 10 with 10 more sections of cobbles to go, Paul. Ballerini has reached the front of the race.
What a remarkable comeback. But that's what Paris-Roubaix is all about. Never giving up, always keeping your morale. Even if you have bad luck, crashes, punctures, mechanical incidents, you always have to insist on going forward, continuing with the battle. And that's what Franco Ballerini has done now. He's fought his way back from a rear guard action after the Forest of Arenberg, picked his way right through the field, gone with the right groups, and now he's found himself right at the front of the race once more.
But he has been so immensely strong today. He has now put the two leaders, Gouvenou and Dieriksen, under pressure. It looks like immediately Gouvenou is cracking here. Dieriksen is hanging on just about, but Ballerini seems to have taken the conscious decision to go for home so soon.
Well, that's the thing you have to do when you ride for a squad like Mapei, because any one of those riders in that squad have a great chance. Tom Steels, he's done his job for the day. All he's going to do now is just try and get to Roubaix in a large group without too much difficulty, because there's still the World Cup rankings to think about in a race like this. You have to make sure that 3 riders from each team finish. Steels a long way back. There's Michael Rich. This is the section of cobblestones which takes him over the motorway, and in front of Rich there you can see is Thierry Gouvenou. So it looks as if Ludo Dieriksen is just hanging on for grim death onto the back wheel of Franco Ballerini. There are the two leaders now, and very shortly they should take that left-hand turn over the motorway bridge.
Well, he must have wondered what on earth came up to him here, but Dieriksen has done well to just hang on. I can't believe he's going to hang on for much longer, because Ballerini's looking for no help at all. Here's Rick picking up Gouvenou. So even Michael Rick, who has had his bad luck today, is still riding immensely strongly here. As in the distance there, we can see Tom Steels as well. Now they're also on zone 10. Ballerini's about to exit zone 10 here. Dieriksen no longer willing to work, if indeed he can, with the man from Mapei. The man, which is very strange, Francesco Moser is one of the other great Italians who love Paris-Roubaix, but there aren't many come from Italy who relish these cobbles like Franco Ballerini does.
Certainly don't. Italy have only won Paris-Roubaix 9 times before, and one of those men who took 3 victories was Francesco Moser. So it's not a race that normally smiles on the Italians, and it has been a love-hate relationship for Franco Ballerini over the last few years. In fact, when he finished second to Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, he was beaten in a photo finish. He walked away from the stadium and said, "I'm never coming back to this race again," but he's been back every year since.
Absolutely, and well, today maybe he's going to repeat the win again, which he's had already once in this event. Now, There's the open cobblestones as our valiant cameraman today are rushing around like rabbits here to try and keep up with the way this race is fragmenting every few seconds. Ballerini now off zone number 10 takes a look to see who has still stayed with him. The answer is only Ludo Dieriksen, and a question of for how long, because we're now heading to zone number 9.
Well, Ludo Dieriksen did a good job there surviving. At one time he was 3 or 4 lengths just behind Franco Ballerini, and I was convinced he was going to crack. He knows how important it is now to try and stay with Ballerini, and he has done that. And there Ballerini signalling to him, come on then, if you can stay with me, you can work with me.
I can't believe that Dieriksen can do anything right now, because this man has been in the lead since Saint-Quentin. And what Ballerini wants to do is make him work, fry him and leave him. And if Dieriksen's got any sense, he'll stay right where he is right now.
Well, in the back of his mind, he's probably thinking about Duclos-Lassalle, because Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle at that time was 39 years of age, and he played the, oh, I'm sorry, I'm a poor old man, I can't work with you. And when they got to the finish line, he just had enough strength to come by Franco Ballerini in that sprint. So I would think if Ballerini's thinking about going all the way to the finish now, he must certainly want to do it alone, and must, even though Ludo Dieriksen has been at the front of the race for a long time, want to try and get rid of him. As we hit zone number 9, there's the other point too, Paul, isn't there? Because of the nature of this race with the cobblestones, you never know when bad luck comes to you. You certainly don't, and there are still 9 sections of cobblestones still to go, as you said, and it could well be that he'll have Dieriksen sitting on his wheel for the next 10 or 15 kilometres. He'll build up a lead of 1 or 2 minutes over the chasing group, and then he could break his bike. So he would much rather try and find himself in the lead on his own, so that if there is any chance of a problem, he can recover nicely. Well, we're on zone 9, and it looks as though Ballerini's content to set the pace, and Dieriksen still has the ability to follow here. He seems to ride his saddle very lowly, Paul, low down, doesn't he, Dieriksen? He certainly does, but you can see the power of Franco Ballerini there, sitting on the bottom of the handlebars. He's got massive power in those thighs of his, and that's the only way really to ride over the cobblestones, to keep the speed up as high as possible, because you do float over the surface of these cobbles, and once you start to weaken, then you hit everyone. Well, that's a reaction by Mappé. Yeah, as they come off the cobblestones here, they're trying to rid themselves now, the 2 Gann boys and the 2 riders from Rabobank, which I can't see at the moment, but I presume, oh, there they are, just tucking into our picture. So they are actually now, they almost as if they feel confident that Ballerini is going to win this race, and now they're trying to do a 1-2-3 like they did a couple of years ago, which I never thought we'd ever see again. Well, Andrea Taffy there going on the front, having been led onto the cobbles by Wilfred Peters. What they're trying to do, I think, is put Frederic Moncassin under a little bit of pressure. Peters has drifted off the back there after that little acceleration of his. Frederic Moncassin with the black hair on the front, Magnus Backstedt in second position. And the 2 Rabobank boys not doing a whole lot of work in this group. Well, Backstedt is a name I've never before mentioned in commentary, and today this man has been a true hero of the race, done so much for his teammate Moncassin. He certainly has. He's been a great find, I think, for Gann. He was 4 times the champion of his own country at the time trial, but this is the way they went onto the cobblestones. That was Wilfred Peters trying to sort it out, and Backstedt now has been put to the front by Frederic Moncassin to do all of the work to try and pull him back into this race. And a great find he is for Gann, because not only did he win the Grand Prix of Isberg last year, but 2 years ago he won the Boland Bank Classic, winning a stage there, and that was the first time I saw him back in 1995, where he won 2 stages, and one of them he in fact rode away from the main field, which was made up of mainly professionals from TVM and ONCE, and he held a 20-second lead for the last 20 kilometres, and they couldn't pull him back. Well, this nasty little stretch of cobblestones are sure to be swinging hairpin left to climb up to the main road on the left shoulder here. But Ballerini has managed to persuade Ludo Dieriksen now to get out front and do a bit of the work. And I don't blame him on this stretch of road. At least he can see where he's going. There's the hairpin bend, and there's the chase group as well. And the race now swinging back on itself here before it heads off to zone number 7. So the race is still really on a handkerchief. Anybody could win, and if Franco Ballerini falters slightly, he's got 2 men in the chase group behind to pull him back into the fold. Well, the Mappé have salvaged something out of this race. All they want now is the result, and despite the fact that Patrick Lefevre, so disconsolate coming out of the Forest of Orenburg, saying, I've lost my 2 top men. Well, he seems to have forgotten Tom Steels, Wilfred Peters, Andrea Taffy and Franco Ballerini, because those are the men who could still shape this race up for Mappé. There's Thierry Gouvenou leading them round that hairpin bend with Michael Rich, and just a little bit further back I'm fairly sure we'll see the big chasing group now made up of the 2 Gan riders, 2 Rabobank riders and the 2 riders from Mapei.
And there they are, some 7 riders here. Tom Steels hanging on the back. He's got rubber legs, I think, now. Tom Steels, the champion of Belgium, left-hand circuit here. And we're behind Tom Steels now as we hairpin ourselves away up to the top. And
there's a problem there. Phil Baxter put his hand up on that section of cobbles there. In fact, Tom Steels has got problems too, and that's with his gears. His chain has come off and he's trying to get it sorted out, and you can see there's always a helping hand here in the north of France here in Paris-Roubaix to get somebody up and running. There's Baxter stopped on the right-hand side of the road, so that's a bad move there for Frédéric Moncassin because he's lost a big engine that was helping him.
Well, I think Baxter has punctured just as he came off the cobbles there, and we saw the chain was off from Tom Steels. He's got it back on, but he's in his highest possible gear here, and he's making my legs ache as he climbs up. There's what happened. His chain comes off as he came out of that corner, and all he can do is stop. And on the other side, you see, it is a flat tyre there as the Mavic service car gets up alongside Baxter. You just never know when bad luck strikes here in Paris-Roubaix, and now he has isolated Fred Moncassin.
And I think Tom Steels is a spent force there, bearing the sequel of his crash earlier on in that section of cobblestones near Mont-Saint-Pével. And I think all he can hope now is just to survive to the finish. The 2 leaders, though, still looking very comfortable. Dieriksen still able to feed himself, keep himself topped up with energy, because there's still an awful lot of racing to go before the finish. And now Franco Ballerini not asking for any help, just happy to ride on the front and set the tempo.
The Italian-Belgian tandem here at the front. And he's through another nasty stretch of cobblestones, and behind now he'll be unaware that the chase group has been weakened by the loss of Baxter. I don't think it's been weakened by the loss of Tom Steels, because I think Tom Steels was weakened as it was. But these 2 riders now are still heading down for the last 45 kilometres of racing, and the only man left to worry about for Ballerini now, and he must be worried about him, Paul Ludo Dieriksen, because Belgians, we know, are very tenacious bike riders.
They certainly are, and especially when it comes to a race like Paris-Roubaix, which everybody wants to win. It's not called the Queen of Classics for nothing. And so if Dieriksen can just sit on the back wheel of Franco Ballerini for a few more kilometres and keep eating and drinking as he was doing just a little bit earlier, he can recover. But Ballerini looks very concentrated. The face on him is just thinking about keeping the speed as high as possible. So he should make sure that he doesn't get into one of those zones where you forget and you feel that you are superhuman, you can ride anybody off your wheel, because if he gives Dieriksen the chance, he will do everything he can to recover.
And there's the signal he wants him back round again now. And in fairness, Dieriksen doesn't hesitate. He drives through and gives Ballerini a spell at the back. But I wouldn't like a Ballerini behind me right now, because you get the feeling this man is going to sprint away and put in a huge attack at any moment, as we're heading up now towards zone number 7. Still 7 very, very bad stretches of cobbles to come.
Certainly is a huge ride. He's paid an awful lot of money by Mapei, and a lot of Italians say that he's not worth the money because he only wins a couple of races a year throughout his career. He's never been a major prolific winner. His first year in 1986 he didn't win anything at all. Then in 1987 he won one victory, 1998 1 victory, 1989 2, and then he had a great year in 1990 with 5 wins. But since then he's been winning a couple of races here and a 1 race there, but never really the super winner.
But he's won some big races, Paul, and he's Mr. Consistent when it comes to the classics, because he's always in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th or 6th positions in these one-day classics. And he's had the lot in Paris-Roubaix. He's been a past winner, he's had 2nd, he's had 3rd twice. So he certainly knows this race inside out.
2 Mapei boys on the back of that group there looking happy. But this is it. Look at that. Franco Ballerini has dropped Ludo Dieriksen on this very long uphill rise.
Well, that's amazing, but he made him work, you see, and you could see on the face of Dieriksen he was suffering, and now he's turned the screw that little bit tighter, and we're on zone 7 here, and Ballerini is bouncing away on his own now. He still has the best part of 27 miles to go to the finish, and that to me is a long way. Under normal circumstances I'd say he's mad, but the way he's left this race spread-eagled, he's got to have a real chance now.
He certainly must feel confident, because that's about an hour and 10 minutes of racing still to go, and he's made a great comeback since the Forest of Arenberg with 60 miles remaining. He's leapfrogged from group to group to bring himself back to the front of the race, so he's obviously used an awful lot of energy, but he will know every inch of the running now from here to the finish, because this rider from Mapei has ridden this race so many times before, but also in the last couple of weeks he will have been back here too to make sure he can check the cobblestones and see just exactly which way they're going, because nowadays the last 60 miles of Paris-Roubaix is a very complicated affair with the high-speed train that's been built across this area. The race actually has to zigzag around north of France to look for cobblestone sections like this.
Well, look at the wet on the road there now as Michael Rick is at the front here. I think it's Leon Van Bon. No, it's not, who's trying to get up behind him. But you see, what's happened here now is it's every man for himself now. They're hardly riding in a bunch anymore as they pick their way through the mud here on the cobblestones. They'll almost be unconcerned about who is in the lead at the moment. It's a matter of survival.
I think Rolf Sorensen said it best before the start this morning when he said when you come to the final stage of Paris-Roubaix, it really is a question of every man has to ride for himself. Even though Magnus Backstedt is doing what he can to help Frédéric Moncassin, it's a question of riding for yourself, looking after yourself, because all of these teams have been reduced in numbers. There's no such thing as teamwork anymore. It really is every man for himself.
And it's Backstedt first, followed by Rick, followed by Sorensen. Thierry Gouvenou is back here now, so too. Just behind him we've got Fred Moncassin, so at least Backstedt got back up to this group. It must have been quite a chase, and he's still strong enough to put the pressure on here as he's caught out Rick and Sorensen, but Moncassin quickly pedalling through. I'm going to try and give his young teammate a hand here, because I have to say Backstedt's wonderful. And look over the back there, that's the remnants of that 20-man chasing group, and they're still in the picture.
They still are very much in the picture. This race is quite strange for the moment. We have Franco Ballerini going out on his own at the moment, but these groups behind only separated by about 30 or 40 seconds each, so the race could all still very much come back together. But I hope we don't get treated to a big punch sprint on the track in Roubaix.
It's unthinkable, surely, right now. Henk Vogels is back in that group, and if they could get across here, he'd be a good ally for the two boys from Gand in this chase group.
Michael Rick just cracked there on that section of cobblestones, but Thierry Gouvenou there in 5th position is really doing a storming ride. He's managed to get into the slipstream of the riders that have caught him up, and he'll hope that he can survive now over the section of cobblestones, because I would think that's the only place that he can get dropped on the cobblestone section, because that's where you really need to ride with all of your force. And on the back of that lead, that group of riders now, all of the time, the two riders from Mapei, they won't do anything at all now to the success of this breakaway. They'll just hope that Franco Ballerini can start to build up a little bit of a lead. And even if he does get caught, it'll be up to them to attack.
Fueling up for the last 40 kilometres or so to ride for Franco Ballerini. This, remember, is his 10th Paris-Roubaix. He's never failed to finish this event, and the majority of his finishes have been in the top 5 places. So Franco Ballerini now free as a bird. He's got rid of everybody. He's leapfrogged stage by stage till he caught the last rider, Ludo Dieriksen, who is now been dispatched backwards towards that chasing group. And there could be a regrouping behind yet. I don't think Franco would have chosen to make the move this early before the finish, but I think he's found himself left with absolutely no choice.
Hand up there is to call up his team manager, Patrick Lefebvre, who before the start this morning said that the two leaders for the Mapei squad were going to be Stefano Zanini and Johan Museo, and now he's going to say something to him like, well, I told you this morning you shouldn't have given it to me. That's Fabrizio Fabri, the other team manager, the Italian team manager there, as he takes on board some high energy drink.
And now he's settling down obviously for the big escape. And we haven't seen a big escape like this for some years in Paris-Roubaix, not by the single rider. This is the quality of the great Eddy Merckx now. And Franco Ballerini has wanted this, even though he has won it once. And he'll always tell you he should have already have won Paris-Roubaix twice, because he actually threw it away in the sprint finish, which was finally taken by Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, who did also win it twice.
He certainly did. Well, Michael Rick has recovered there after being dropped on the cobblestones and pulled himself back into this race. And these riders, these men who've been out since the 57th kilometre of the race this afternoon, really must be on a high to know that they're still in with a chance at the end of this very difficult Paris-Roubaix. A lot of discussion going on there between Taffy and Wilfred Peters. I wonder what they're thinking about.
Well, maybe they're going to plot the second and third finishes, because it's a possibility now that they could do what we thought you'd never see in a generation again, and that's one team claim the top 3 places, which Mapei did a couple of years ago when Museo won, and then it was Bortolami and Andrea Taffi. Bortolami, by the way, is still very much in this race and is coming up in the group behind the Moncassin group. And so he too is still in this race, along with Henk Vogels is in that group as well, and Christophe Capel. And Andre Schmil, we understand, has bridged to the second half of the chase group. We haven't seen him all day.
It's not been anywhere near any of the TV cameras, and another man who will have an awful lot to talk about tonight. But Paris-Roubaix is about that. If you get a chance to act as a fly on the wall in the showers, every rider who finished this event has a story of woe about Paris-Roubaix. The punctures, the crashes, the technical problems, and it always is something that these riders are proud of, to be able to talk about taking part in Paris-Roubaix. And today I do feel, Phil, that this has been one of the great Paris-Roubaix, because these conditions really are atrocious.
This has been a superb Paris-Roubaix. We thought it would be because of the weather conditions these last 2 weeks, but these are the men who've made it so exciting, and Ballerini has been simply superb. It's a shame we couldn't have witnessed his chase across from the back groups, because they must have been quite spectacular.
He certainly must have been, but for the moment he's got to try and ride consistently, not push himself too hard now, because what he has to do now is dose his effort over the next 45 minutes of racing, because there's still a long way to go before we get to the finish. You can see how fast he's riding over these cobblestones. He's able to pick his way very carefully. He's all on his own, and he realizes that he's got 2 men behind, 2 very able lieutenants, to try and close down any counterattacks, but he must make sure that he doesn't push himself too hard.
Well, he's riding very, very strong at the moment and doesn't appear to be faltering at all. He's on a mission, and he's proved that to us today. He gets drawn to Roubaix like nobody else seems to be, and he hasn't ridden this race from the front. He's had to come from the back to do it, and when you do that, I somehow don't see him failing now, and we certainly wouldn't wish any ill luck on him. As we see another huge sector here with the crowds enormous. They always seem to know where to go, because they know where the crashes might happen, and they know the particularly vicious stretches of cobblestones. And this sector here, well, the water's on the right, but Ballerini's quite happy down the middle. Now, these riders here coming into sector 7.
Still it's Backstedt on the front, Phil. He's doing a magnificent ride this afternoon, the Swedish rider on the GAN squad. All the time we come back to this chasing group, we can see the work done by the Swede Magnus Backstedt. A real revelation, and a man who I think Roger Leger is going to be very happy that he signed up to his squad. But interesting to note that Leger has always been fairly interested in signing up foreign riders. He's never been one of the French team managers to stick with the French riders on his squad. He does have some, but he has an awful big group of expatriates riding for him. The Australians, Chris Borman from Great Britain, and now Magnus Backstedt.
And the funny thing is, whereas you expect the riders to learn the language of the manager, in the GAN case, the manager's learned to speak English quite well, so he can speak to all the riders he's signed up.
He certainly knows how to look after them. I think all that goes back to the days when he used to manage Greg LeMond, and one of the few French managers at the time who actually took time out to try and learn the English language, because he realized how important it was going to be with the number of English-speaking riders coming into the sport. Franco Ballerini, by the way, doesn't speak English, only speaks Italian and French. And Patrick Lefevre, the team manager there behind in the Mapei team car, very fluent in the Italian language. So I would think a lot of communication going between these 2 men at the moment.
Now, this group we're looking at now, officially, 1 minute and 42 seconds back. Somewhere ahead is Ludo Dieriksen, because he hasn't been caught to the best of our knowledge. And, of course, the leader on the road now is Franco Ballerini. This is the zigzag corner where we were on the ground when we went around the corner with Ballerini. And 1 minute and 42 seconds has slipped by since he went around this bend. 3, 6, 8 riders still here in this group. I've no signs of Tom Steele, so I don't think he recovered on that corner. He never got back up to the group. He stayed behind. He might well have been picked up by that Schmil group, which is coming up, but we've got no time checks on that group at all.
Must be pretty happy with 1 minute 42 seconds advantage over this group. Now, if he can just build it up to around about 2 minutes, then he can start to dose his effort a lot more sensibly and make sure that he can just maintain his advantage over the chasing group. Interesting though, Phil, it's still Backstedt on the front here, and it's nice to see that Michael Rick is still tagged onto the back of this group, as is the young French rider Thierry Gouvenou.
Well, they both had a great day in Paris-Roubaix today, and if they hang on for a bit longer, they're going to get a very high finish here. They could be in the top 15 on the day, and that's nothing to be sniffed at in Paris-Roubaix. This is a real tough race today. Just look at the mud there on the wheels and the cranks of Franco Ballerini, who continues at a terrific pace here, because it looks to me, Paul, as though he's actually going quicker than that chase group right now. I think he's pulling away.
He certainly is flying. It's nice as well to get a chance to look at the machine that he's using this afternoon. Basically, it's a standard machine. There's no bells and whistles, nothing fancy, nothing modern. It's a basic carbon fiber Colnago machine. No suspension on the front, but a normal bike like Eddie Merckx would have won his Paris-Roubaix on. So he will be very happy to see the return of standard machines to an event like Paris-Roubaix. The reason that the Colnago team don't use the suspension forks is because Ernesto Colnago, the designer of these machines, will not have suspension forks or any changes done to his frames. He claims that he can build a bicycle which will ride comfortably over the cobblestones, and it certainly is this afternoon.
It certainly is, and if you caught a glimpse of that speedometer there on the motorbike, it said 50 kilometers an hour. That's 31 miles an hour he's riding on the flat roads here. Now, there's no way in the world that anybody's going to be catching him if he can hold that sort of speed.
That's the important thing for him to do now, is just to make sure that he rides sensibly. He'll be getting information from his team manager on a regular basis now, because right behind him in the team car, Patrick Lefebvre and the Italian team manager Fabrizio Fabri will be conferring. They'll be getting information from the race radio all the time coming up here to let him know just exactly what is happening behind. Fabrizio Fabri there on the right-hand side there, obviously consulting the television, because a lot of these team managers for the big classics, Phil, they actually have a television on board so they can see exactly what is going on in the race, and they can get a lot more information than they can from race radio.
You think they have better things to do when they're working and watch television in the car, wouldn't you? But anyway, they're going to be delighted, and I would think a little bit surprised at the way this race is turning out for them, because 200 kilometers ago they thought the whole race was through the window, and now they've got 2 in the chase group and 1 in the lead. Backstedt will not give up, will he? This big Swede is pile driving this breakaway through again, and that's Leon van Bon behind him, then Moncassin, then Rolf Sorensen, and then Wilfred Peters, Taffy, Thierry Gouvenou and Michael Rick sitting there at the back.
Well, those 2 riders moving to the back a little bit more often than they were before now. For them, it's just a question of survival. They realise now how far it is to go in Paris-Roubaix, and all they want to do is make sure that they can stay with this group till it gets to the velodrome in Roubaix, because that would be a great performance for them. They're looking at a top 10 position, and when they went out of the pack at kilometre 57 this morning, I don't think either of them thought that they would survive all the way till the end.
On to zone at number 6, and as we thought, in fact, Paul, it was 1 minute 42, but now Ballerini's lead is 2 minutes and 20.
That's remarkable. This is a very dangerous section of cobblestones too. You can see how much mud there is on the side of the road. It's only a short section of cobblestones, but it certainly is one of the tricky ones. And Ballerini is absolutely flying across here. He slipped his back wheel just a little bit there, and he's now back safely onto the smooth pavement.
A nice easy section, and it was only a couple of 100 metres, at 300 metres I think, and he's now 20 miles from the finish, 32 kilometres. And that, well, in theory, will take him around 35-40 minutes to cover at the sort of speed he's riding at.
Well, he's now got around about 4 miles to ride on the good pavement before he comes into the town of Cizoin, and that is where there is a very long section of cobblestones. And once again, when we went to look at it a couple of days ago, it was very muddy indeed, so that could be a point where the race starts to split up behind. Moncassin looks very comfortable, but I don't think he's got the power that his own teammate has got, and in fact he's just checking there on his heart rate monitor, so he's obviously going through a bit of difficulty.
Well, I hope it's good news, because actually this man doesn't look too dirty at all today. He looks as though he's had a fairly trouble-free journey over the cobblestones. Oh, he spent an awful lot of time in the front, which is more to the truth, I think. Hasn't had to ride behind the back wheels of the riders. Look at Sorensen going through there. He's obviously been on the floor. Backstead's been okay. He looks a little bit ungainly on the bike, but nonetheless, he's certainly got a lot of power coming out of him. And up comes the team manager there with a little bit of information. Roger Leger talking to Moncassin, and what he's telling him now is what we've just told you, that the gap has now gone up to 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And Roger Leger, oh, he's come back. I thought he'd gone straight on there.
I thought he was looking for the shortcut to Roubaix there, not happy with the performance of his team, but it is a very difficult job the team manager has to do on a day like Paris-Roubaix. He has to negotiate not only the cobblestones, give information to the riders, but also pay attention to the way the road zigzags across the north of France. But Phil, look at this, still at the back there, they're riding side by side, the two Mapei riders, Taffy and Peters, talking all of the time, discussing, trying to figure out exactly what the tactics must be going into the closing stages. And I'm pretty sure that they've had such an easy ride on one section of cobbles or another. In the future, they're going to put the hammer down and try and split this group.
Well, I wonder if you're right, and I don't think they'll want to incite anything from the group until they feel that Ballerini has the desired lead over them, which now is 2 minutes 20 seconds as they go on to zone 6 as well. Ballerini was well through this section now. This was the short section, you may recall, and it looks like Van Bon has been left to set the pace here now with Fred on his wheel. Actually, sorry Paul, it wasn't very far away from here. I'm not giving too many secrets away. When we're talking of cars, there is Roger Leger. My driver turned us upside down, but he couldn't quite get around one of the corners at all.
He was very apologetic, though, wasn't he?
He said
yes. There was oil on the road, I think, was his excuse.
Yeah, well, there was a camera on my head. But we all came through it well, and we got to interview the winner, who on that occasion was Jean-Marie Wampers of Belgium. And Wampers, by the way, is Flemish for diapers. And there was a few jokes about that, I seem to recall.
I'm sure he soaked up a lot of humour with that. But in fact, that was also the same section of cobbles. If you go back to CBS coverage of Paris-Roubaix many years ago, there was a magnificent crash by Theo de Roy going along there as he fell off in again, a very muddy Paris-Roubaix.
It was indeed, but the last few Paris-Roubaix, I mean, mostly dust until we got to this great edition today. And I think Ballerini, if he gets to the end as the winner, will go down in the annals of history as one of the great all-time winners of Paris-Roubaix, certainly in post-war years, because this has been a tremendous show of strength.
He's now coming round the back of the town of Templeuve, and at a very short distance he will ride into the town of Sizouin, where the section of cobbles is that you can remember in 1994 André Schmiel was almost caught by Johan Museo, and then he cracked, had problems with his new pedals, problem with his new dual suspension bike, and had to change at the side of the road, and André Schmiel rode on to victory that day. But when you get there, that section of cobbles is still 26 kilometres to go before the finish line, and I'm fairly sure that Franco Ballerini knows that.
And if you think Paul Sherwin seems to know these roads remarkably well, well, he should, because he used to live in the area when he was a cyclist.
But I never used to ride over the cobblestones for training. I knew where they all were, and I used to do my best to try and avoid them. The only time that I would ride the cobblestones at Paris-Roubaix were actually in the event.
And I can't blame you for that. Though also, by the way, if you ever get a chance to enter and ride, if you ever want to ride Paris-Roubaix, not the professional race, they have a randonnée or an Audax event here where you can have a crack at riding the complete course on a different day, and many hundreds of cyclists do take up the opportunity. It's a fun day out, of course, until you have problems and you've got to repair it all by yourself. But then so did these bike riders 60 years ago.
They certainly did. And if you want to do that Audax ride, I'd suggest you do it on a mountain bike. It's a lot more comfortable.
Good point. Now back to the race here, and Franco Ballerini is still pile driving on. The latest time check, Paul, he's now over 3 minutes up, so he's just riding away from the field.
Well, I never would have thought that. A man going out almost 60 kilometres from the finish and building up a lead like this all the time. And he doesn't look at all as if he's starting to weaken. He's riding at a very good effort. He's making sure that he stays well within his limits. There's no pressure being put on him at all. And unless there's a major reaction comes from that group behind, this man is going to ride into Roubaix on his own, because he's riding sensibly, he's riding consistently, he's picking his way over the cobblestones very nicely indeed, and he knows just exactly how far it is to go. And I think for the moment there's no pressure at all on the shoulders of Franco Ballerini.
33 years of age, Franco turned professional back in 1986, 12 seasons ago. And he's still winning the best bike races in the world. And I think I'm safe in saying he'll win this, but a 3-minute buffer is a nice buffer now, because it means that he has got room for a puncture or a fall and a remount and still stay up in front. Moncassin still doing his share of the work here, with some help coming from the muddied Leon Van Bon from his fall in the forest of Arenberg. And Backstead, well, he's looking tired now, but he still won't give up working.
He won't give up working, but you can't reproach him for looking tired, because he's done a monster share of the work this afternoon. He's always gone to the front. He's always been pushing to try and make sure he can bring his team leader, Frédéric Moncassin, back into the race.
And here again is a word of advice for Ballerini. But at this stage of the race, Paul, the fact he's pulling away, he knows how he feels, and he's feeling pretty good inside right now. He knows, he doesn't need to be told that he probably is pulling away from the race.
He certainly needs to be told, I think, because it's always good to have the idea, because he's all on his own in the race. Nobody around him, nobody to give him concise information. And the fact that it's going up all the time will, in fact, boost his morale. It'll make him feel an awful lot more comfortable. And when it does start to hurt just a little bit, he'll know that he can back off, because he does have that buffer, which is now up around 3 minutes. Patrick Lefevre on the phone. I wonder if he's on the phone to Milano talking to Dr. Squincy.
Well, there was always the controversy a couple of years ago that the phone call actually arranged the result of Paris-Roubaix when the three Mapei boys were out in front, Museu, Bortolami and Taffy. Well, there's no need to call up to arrange the result today, because there's only one. And Franco Ballerini looking pretty cool and comfortable out there now. He's through the town of Cizouin, and he's now heading round to the back doubles towards Roubaix.
He's a huge rider, a very big man, not at home when it comes to the big mountains of races like the Tour de France and the Tour of Italy, but once you come to these short, flat climbs that they have around Flanders, or they have in Paris-Roubaix, he certainly does feel at home. He finished third overall in Tour of Flanders last year in what for him could have been a victory when he and Rolf Sorensen came up against Frédéric Moncassin. So certainly this Italian rider very much at home when it comes to these roads of the north of France and lower Belgium. And I think just in the corner there is Ludo Dirksen, so he's about to get picked up by this chasing group of 8.
You're absolutely right, there he is. So Dirksen, who has been out in front since Saint-Quentin, is now seeing the race for second place at the moment come by him, led by Moncassin. They know now there's only one man ahead as well. Now Dirksen looking for a back wheel, or is he going to go straight through and out the back door?
Tap on the head there coming from Andrea Taffy, is it? In fact, it was Wilfred Peters, the Belgian rider. He knows this man very well, and I think he's just saying, well done, great ride today, but we're here. Try and stay with us for the ride, because it could be fun.
I think you're right there, but it was nice to see that manoeuvre by Wilfred Peters. He appreciates a fellow professional's work today, as again all the work being done by the GAN teams with a little help from Van Bon and Rolf Sorensen.
Now, this is the town of Cizouin, and that is the next section of cobblestones that Franco Ballerini will be facing. Just in the top there you can see the trees, and this is a very tricky section of cobblestones, not the same as it used to be a couple of years ago, because in fact it's split into two. There is some tarmac in the middle, and Franco Ballerini will know it very well. All of the riders really do have an intimate knowledge of Paris-Roubaix, because the ones who come here year after year are the ones who really want to ride this event. You can't force a rider to take part in Paris-Roubaix, because it takes a very special mentality to want to come and race it.
Well, Bernard Hinault is famous for criticising this event, and he said he rode it once to win it, so he could say he'd never ride it again. It was inhuman. And now he's part of the organising committee, so I'm not sure where he stands anymore. But we're now on the last 5, or the 5th of 5 stretches remaining now of the cobblestones, as we head now towards the finish, and 3 minutes 10 seconds, so he's still nosing clear.
It's still amazing to see this man pulling away from the chasing group behind, because that chasing group now is up to 9 riders strong. But he has the advantage of being able to pick his way through the cobblestones, and nobody's going to pull any time back on him on the cobblestone sections, because you cannot work together on these sections. It's a question of one man riding at the front and setting the pace for the whole group. So that is where the advantage is for Franco Ballerini. It's one man chasing one man. But up the road, he still has some very serious sections of cobblestones that he has to come up to. And the one I think is the hardest is the one that's known as the Pavé Bleu, which then turns into the Pavé de l'Arbre, which is a very difficult, long section where the race is very often decided.
Well, that is a particularly nasty section that they're on right now. I don't know if you noticed the wheel spin of Ballerini there. And I certainly take my hat off to our cameramen here, who have to stay up with the leaders in Paris-Roubaix. Skilled motorbike handlers they are. And you might note too that they wear the Paris-Roubaix uniform, our cameraman. Oh, he's looking at us now, because they're so proud of this event. There is a status, a symbol of getting that uniform on, because these cameramen are pretty special people, and they're staying with Ballerini now, who is continuing to pull away from the rest of the field. And just look at these cobblestones.
They really are atrocious, but he's riding over them with so much confidence. The advantage when you are in good shape and you have the strength is that you can still control your machine. Once you start to fatigue and you get a little bit of tiredness into the upper part of your body, then you don't have the agility left required, that you can actually move the back end of the bicycle and control it when it starts to slip. And for the moment, everything is going right for Franco Ballerini. You can see here there's no movement in the upper part of his body, looking very strong indeed as he just floats onto the new pavement again. Chance for him to recover before the next section.
End of zone 5, just 4 sections remaining now. Time is running out for the race behind, and I don't think it matters an iota now. There they are just about onto zone number 5. And so the gap is 3 minutes and 15 seconds over the leader, who continues to pull away. And if you analyse this breakaway, really there's only 4 riders doing any work. The back 4 here are just watching.
And having a bit of a hard time there was Thierry Gouvenou, the big mat rider on the back. And that's right, there's only 4 riders who are prepared to chase at all in this group, the 2 men from Rabobank and the 2 riders from Gann. And I would think that shortly is going to be down to 3 men, because the work that Magnus Backstedt has done must mean that surely he can't have all that much energy left in his legs.
And there he is in 4th place, concentrating, trying to relax a little bit, but it's not easy, as Rolf Sorensen pulls a pretty face at the front of this race, bouncing through the cobbles and over the mud. Now the riders letting the gaps form between the wheels as they start to plot their own course to this very tricky section. Back up at the front here, Ballerini. You can tell by this man's face that it is all happening for him today, and this is going to be a marvellous performance.
Well, in fact, when he was beaten by Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, he was riding Paris-Roubaix like this. He was so strong, so confident, but he had the Frenchman all of the time sitting on his wheel. He had exactly the same power as he has today. His advantage this afternoon, though, is there's nobody behind him except around about 3.5 minutes down the road.
Yes, and I think he probably, as you say, Paul, it went through his mind about Duclos when he had Dirksen on his wheel, and that's why he decided to rid himself of the Belgian. He wasn't going to take or make that mistake twice. Now the chase group, by the way, they seem to be spread now. It's over nearly 5 minutes now back to the 3rd group on the road, and 3.5 minutes back to that chase group. So he's pulling away from everybody, and surprisingly, it's a big chase group. They're not catching up with the group being led by Sorensen.
This race really now is becoming a question of survival at the front. Looks like
that's certainly survival on that bend. They're ever so frightened of that corner.
Well, it's a bit tricky, a little precarious as you turn right after these. The 2 sections of cobblestones outside Cizoin as they move around the corner there. That was Van Bon taking them round, and a very tricky section. And I think you're right, you can almost see the difference in the speed. Ballerini was flying over these cobblestones, and now I think this group really is just trying to survive and make sure that they don't have too many incidents.
Well, they certainly seem to me to be losing the impetus here. I think the fact it's Franco Ballerini, all these riders know him. They know his reputation in Paris-Roubaix, and there might be a psychological problem here. They may well feel that this man can't be stopped today right now. End of zone number 5 for them too.
The only thing they can hope for now that he cracks, he has some kind of glucose exhaustion, he forgets to eat because of the excitement of being at the front of a race like this. But the thing with Franco Ballerini, he's too experienced a professional. He's been professional since 1986. He knows how to react under conditions like this, and he knows that he has to keep eating, he has to keep drinking to keep his energy levels topped up to the maximum. He's also in a great situation, riding well within himself, because now as he's riding fairly sensibly, his lead is still increasing.
Well, as we watch the legs of Ballerini, here is a little bit of information which I've just worked out, Paul. He rides number 12 in the race. The date today is the 12th of April. Last night he stayed in room 12 in the hotel. He attacked on Parve number 12, and it's his 12th season of racing. Now, are you superstitious?
I hope he doesn't finish 12th.
Well, that's a good point, but I think there's no danger of that right now.
That's a very good statistic there, and I think Franco Ballerini probably is very happy that he doesn't have number 13. Number 13, in fact, is worn by his own teammate Bart Lezen.
And so far as we know, he has punctured, in fact, Ballerini. We didn't see it, it was very early on, but he looks as though he's not having any problems at all. He's got the right tyres on today for the conditions. He's now on a nice smooth stretch road. He's crossing towards Pavé number 4, and so he's got about a 3-mile gap between the two. That was when he came off Pavé number 5, but it's a lot closer now.
It certainly is. The group behind now, you can see organising themselves, but still only 3 or 4 riders working at the front. Michael Rick tagged on the back there, very happy to be there, and I would think really surviving to stay in contact with that group, because those riders have had a long day at the head of affairs.
Well, it must feel like now he's on a wide open freeway here after all the narrow roads of the cobbles, and probably quite pleased to be here as well. Chance of settling again to around about that 30-mile-an-hour time trialing mode of his. He looks so solid today, Ballerini, as springtime comes to this part of northern France. A little bit behind because of the cold snap that they've had. And
this is the left-hand turn onto the next section of cobbles, Phil. I remember that from this little farm on the right-hand side there. Every bike rider in the north of France knows that farm because they know you come along a big, long section of road and then you turn left. And this, in fact, is a pretty sticky section of cobblestones too. It climbs up. It doesn't look like it here, but it really is a hard section of cobblestones. You climb up here to the top, turn right, and you've still got an awful long way before you get back onto nice, smooth roads again.
And I think we went past the banner that said 20 kilometres to go, so about 12 miles to battle to the finish now.
And I wonder what's going through Ballerini's mind right at this moment, because when he jumped away, he can't really have believed he could ride to the finish all on his own. But as closer he gets to the finish, he must be getting a lot more confident, especially now that the gap is now approaching the 4-minute mark. He's nudging one of the biggest margins, I think, for many years.
Well, he had no choice at the end of the day. He had to go because that group was coming up behind. And by the same token, even though he's on the same team as Taffy and Wilfred Peters, I think he'd be almost afraid of them as well, because there are 2 more riders who want to win Paris-Roubaix, and this man is possessed by this event, and he wanted to make sure it was his today, and I think it will be now.
Certainly riding with a little bit of anger, I think, too, in his legs, that Patrick Lefevre didn't give him full confidence at the start this morning, putting confidence in the Mapei squad, mainly in Stefano Zanini, the leader of the World Cup, and Johan Museo. And so I think for him it's also sorting out the accounts of the team as well, to say, look, when I say I'm good for Paris-Roubaix, I mean it.
Yes, and I don't think, well, Museo's now out and gone to hospital, but Museo would never come clean and say he would help Ballerini at all, which left a big question mark over who would have won this race if Museo was still in it. Now, a little bit of ballet dancing here on this bend, because the cobblestones have almost disappeared beneath a cake of mud. But he gets round it nicely, the crowd enjoying the spectacle, and he's okay. He's onto dry road again, he's up and running. The news on Museo, by the way, is he's got quite a nasty cut on his knee, and he's had a number of stitches in it, but he is still in hospital.
Well, that's a sad day for Johan Museo, because that bad knee is going to put him out for quite a few weeks to come, and that is a shame, because the form that he had last week, I actually thought he could win Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, because he just rode away from everybody last week in the Tour of Flanders, and the form that he had from the week before when he won those 2 races in Belgium certainly showed that it was the big Johan Museo of old.
Absolutely right. Recovered from when he was the world champion, and he only won a few smaller races, and he had bad luck in all of the big races. Well, this rider's got no thoughts of whatever happened to Museo today. Now he's thinking of what might happen to him if he can claim a second cobblestone trophy to take back home to Italy. And he's knocking off all the pavé, and he's riding them like they are smooth road. He's just dancing over the top today.
Certainly no signs of weakness in Franco Ballerini going over these cobblestones. As you can see how relaxed the front part of his body is. What he does here is, in fact, he doesn't hold the handlebars very tightly and tries to steer the machine. He allows the machine to go where it wants to go, and his hands are really there just for the final control. That is why he is such a great rider when it comes to going over these cobblestones. The speed is high, the suppleness is there, he isn't tired at all, and he lets his bike go where it wants to.
Now, these boys are approaching that nasty stretch of cobbles, and it'll be interesting to see how they get round that right-hand bend.
It certainly will, but I think that may be the section of cobbles where the riders have been at the head of the race for an awful long time, may well be put into difficulty, because it's a long section of cobbles, and as you saw before when Franco Ballerini went along there, it is slightly uphill, and that may be why Andrea Taffy's come to the front now, because he wants to get rid of 1 or 2 of these passengers.
Well, past the farm that Paul mentioned earlier, and now this nasty stretch of cobblestones, an ideal place for strong men to have a go. Michael Rick doesn't look too strong sitting at the back now, and in fact Dieriksen has also slipped away here under the impetus of Taffy. Taffy is a vastly underrated bike rider. He really can produce some terrific races.
He certainly can. He won his first professional time trial victory this year in the Tour de Langkawi, and he held the lead in that event in Malaysia until the penultimate day, when his own teammate Gabriel Misaglia took him off him in a very dramatic climb up to a place called the Genting Highlands.
Well, maybe word has reached Taffy that he's free to do a little bit of work now to make this group much smaller, because the gap is almost 4 minutes now to Franco Ballerini, nobody else in front. And so Taffy now might want to sort of reduce this group and strengthen his own chances and that of Wilfred Peters of a higher finish at Roubaix. So that's 3 sections of the pavé today for Franco.
Well, this is the section I was telling you about before called the Pavé Bleu. They really are a very difficult section of cobblestones. They call them the Pavé Bleu because that means blue cobblestones. They're a very hard granite, and in situations like this, they are very slippy indeed. He's picking himself across them very easily, and once he gets around a couple more corners, he goes onto the section then known as the Pavé de l'Arbre, where in years gone by, a lot of riders have launched themselves to success, and he will realise that when he comes to the end of this section, he has 17 kilometres left to go to the finish.
I think this was the stretch a few years ago when Jonathan Boyer launched himself into the field. He made a spectacular crash, and that videotape was replayed many times. And Jonathan now retired, of course, and Franco Ballerini, well, I suppose he's not too far away from retirement himself, but he's going to go out now with certainly 2 wins in Paris-Roubaix under his belt.
Flicking across there to get onto the path at the side of the cobblestones. Ballerini still looking very comfortable, still looking very confident as he picks his way across these cobblestones. But you can see all of the dampness that has come onto the course, a lot of that from the mountain bike race yesterday and the cars and the press vehicles that have gone ahead of today's Paris-Roubaix. But Ballerini safely through there. Once he gets to the end of the section here, he'll take a left-hand turn and then he'll climb up to the little cafe of the Arbre.
17 kilometres, if that left to go now for Franco Ballerini. The cobblestones as bad as ever. There's the gendarmerie guiding the riders through the sections of cobblestone. Certain areas banned to all followers except team vehicles, so not even the press or the television can get down these roads because of the fear that should they have an accident or break down, the race itself would be blocked. And the way clear now for Franco Ballerini. His face giving nothing away here as he bounces over these cobblestones. Remember, he's broken away with something like 25 miles to go on his own. He's dodging this one a little bit, Paul. He's having to hold his bike up because the ground now is absolutely atrocious as Ballerini heads towards the end of zone number 3, which will lead him just 17 kilometres to go. And I don't blame you, Franco. Take it easy.
Certainly, what he was trying to do there was stay on the crest of the cobblestones because it was just a little bit drier than the cobbles on either side of it. But the problem is, to do that, you have to take 1 or 2 little risks, and because of the camber, you can get loss of traction in the front and the rear of the machine. So Ballerini there precariously picking himself over the top of the cobblestones. You can just see the little crown there, which is where Ballerini is riding now.
Well, he flashes by. The lead car looks close, but in fact it's an optical illusion. He's not that close to the leader here. Ballerini hasn't put a wheel wrong on this course today, not that we know of anyway. He's riding with such confidence. They've dried out a little bit, the cobblestones just here. The crowd enjoying the spectacle as they lean forward to see Ballerini. Remember, they've listened to this on radio or watched it on television before they've come into view, so they know who's coming at them. And Ballerini, although he's Italian, is a very popular personage here.
He certainly is. Any rider who performs well consistently in Paris-Roubaix and the Tour of Flanders endears himself not only to the French from the north of France but also to the Belgians. The flags will be out from all the countries of Europe over the next few kilometres waving for Franco Ballerini. And you know what, Phil, it looks as if he's getting stronger as the race is going on.
Time checks are still increasing. He's nibbling up now to nearly 4.5 minutes at the moment. And this is a long stretch of cobbles here, just over 2 kilometres in fact. So even at the end of the race, Roubaix will not lie down. But Ballerini just seems to be getting quicker and quicker. The Belgian flag flying won't worry Franco. He's seen plenty of Italian flags amongst this crowd as well.
He certainly has. This is the end of the Pavé de l'Arbre as he makes the right-hand turn. Not a very short rest for him on the smooth pavement before he turns left onto the next section of cobblestones, but a long flat section here, and then he'll be heading down towards Gruzon, and he'll be feeling a lot more confident now because he's well inside 20 minutes to go to the finish.
He knows now that it's not much longer, and he'll also be relishing very shortly the thought of entering a stadium packed with enthusiasts, a totally free spectacle. Nobody's charged to go into the Roubaix stadium, and it is packed out with people. They're watching it from the centre on a huge screen, and they're cheering every move already. It's a real atmosphere in the stadium.
He's pretty confident, Phil. The way he went round that corner there, he hardly slowed down at all. He leaned into the corner as if it was a dry section of cobblestones, kept his speed high, and now on the drier section he's using all of his power to pick his pace up again to around about 45, 46 kilometres an hour. Ballerini very confident indeed the way he's riding over these cobblestones, and still there's no signs of weakness in his shoulders at all. Getting stronger as the day goes on. Really going to be a great win for this man, because barring a break of his machinery, I don't think that anything is going to stop him riding alone to the victory in Paris-Roubaix.
Well, this time on, a kilometre of cobbles, rather a cruel little section this. They all call it Zone 3. In total, it is 3.3 kilometres long.
Taffy at the front here, still trying to cause a little bit of damage in that group behind, but shadowing him, Frédéric Moncassin, and right behind there, moving up, is Wilfried Peters.
This looks like crunch time for this group here, because in fact those three have got themselves a gap. Van Bon and Sorensen. Sorensen at the front at the moment, Van Bon at the back of these three. Backstead surely is just about on his limits now. Moncassin has tried to get in touch with the two Mappé boys, but there could be big trouble for Fred here, because he's got both of them. In fact, as I speak, this looks like an attack from Wilfried Peters going.
Peters, in fact, just trying to stay in contact there with the pressure on the front here by Andrea Taffy. Moncassin taking a lot of risks there, going right through the gutters, flicking across now to the wheel of Wilfried Peters. Peters has decided that he's going to take up the pressure and try and crack Frédéric Moncassin. A little bit of touch of shoulders there. There's no love lost between these boys. They've been sitting on for the last 30 or 40 kilometres, but that is their right. Their man Franco Ballerini is leading the race, and it certainly does look as if this group has cracked.
Well, they got round that corner. Moncassin wrestling his bike a little bit, but he's a fair good mountain bike rider, is Fred Moncassin as well, and so he's a good bike handler. But right now he's got his hands completely full here with the two Mappé boys, because they're both got in front of him now, and it looked in that flash of the camera there that they're beginning to get rid of Fred Moncassin here. This is a serious move to give Mappé 1, 2, 3.
Well, they're going for it now. Look at Wilfried Peters. He's really got the hammer down. Almost on his wheel is Andrea Taffin. They've got the gap that they were looking for. They knew the danger man was Frédéric Moncassin. They had to get rid of him before the finish if they were going to try and repeat their success of a couple of years ago. That's finishing first, second and third. But now they've still got 17 kilometres to go for the finish. So if I was Fred, I'd sit up now and wait for the Rabobank boys behind.
I think he's no choice, Paul, because they're catching him, and the two boys up front. Well, I'm really not a betting man, but had I been, I would have said you would have never have seen Mappé take 1, 2, 3 in a Paris-Roubaix again in lifetime. They did it in 1994, when incidentally Ballerini was fifth on that occasion, almost giving them a top 4 finish. But now he's in the lead, and Peters and Taffy are going away from what is a very tight chase group, and there's no one else near these riders at all now, because the next group on the road is some 2.25 minutes behind.
Well, Taffy taking a lot of risks down the side there to get onto the smoothest part of the road to try and pick up just a little bit of extra speed. But once he started to slow down, Wilfried Peters comes over to help him out and try and build up an advantage over the rest of that group. They've laid now already round about 10 seconds over the group with Frédéric Moncassin.
Well, Fred, I think, found his hands full there. He didn't know what to do. He tried to hang on, but they really did work him over, and he lost his wheel a little bit. They chose the bad section of cobble. This, of course, is the advantage of going and taking a good look at the course. And if you're in a position to win this race, you know when you can put home the vital attack. They're now on to the second segment of zone number 3. This is a kilometre long.
Certainly is a very long, hard section of cobblestones. But when Mappé finished first, second and third a couple of years ago, they got an awful lot of criticism in the press, especially from Jean-Marie Leblanc, the organiser of the Tour de France and, of course, Paris-Roubaix, by saying that they manipulated the result of one of the great classics. Well, the way this race has played itself out today, even if they do finish first, second and third, I don't think anybody can criticise the way they've ridden.
That's absolutely true. And this man has deserved his victory today. He'll have a great story to tell the press at the end of it, and he won't be blaming Johan Museo for anything like foul tactics and not helping him win the race, because poor old Johan is currently in hospital with his crash.
He's been taken to a small hospital just across the border in Kortrijk, where in fact information coming to us that he's actually broken his kneecap, and that will put him out for an awful long time, especially at such a late age in his career. So that is a shame, because Museo had fantastic form. But these two riders now certainly got a fight on their hands, because that group behind, once they get onto the smoother sections of roads, will organise themselves and try and pull back the two Mappé riders. But you have to not forget, Phil, these two men have been sitting at the back of that group for an awful long time now.
Well, if you can have fresh legs at around about 260 kilometres covered, then these guys have got them. But they've left behind some very tired bike riders, and it's amazing how this race has swung round in the favour of Mappé, when really by midway through it looked a total disaster for them.
Certainly did. Patrick Lefevre was almost devastated by the fact that he'd lost the two men who he counted on to be the best performers in today's Paris-Roubaix when Stefano Zanini and Johan Museeuw went down in the forest of Arenberg. But that's what this race is all about. The tide can turn, luck can change, and that's exactly what has happened here to the Mapei team, because everything looked to be going wrong, and now the ball has changed, the shoe is on the other foot, and they're riding on the crest of a wave.
And this man here knows, because he knows this course as well as just about anybody from Belgium or France, that he is now running down towards the last couple of segments of Pave and then the running into town. There'll be that nice ride down to Roubaix Stadium and then into an enormous ovation, I would imagine, here at the finishing line.
The next two sections of cobblestones are not really a whole lot to write home about either, because the penultimate section near Hem has got a long piece of tarmac road down the side of it, so you do get a chance to actually get off the cobblestones and not have too much of a jarring. And then the final section, really just before the stadium, is very much a section of cobblestones which was put down really as a memento to Paris-Roubaix, and it's just outside the stadium itself.
And the trees still waiting to blossom out fully, as spring takes a while in coming to this corner of France. Nice stretch of smooth road now, and this is where Ballerini all of the time is making ground, but the two chasers are also getting clear of the rest of the race as well, so it really is now possible. Look at the long space now between these two. Once clear, Taffy and Peters have combined into team time trial mode here.
Well, that's the great thing about getting away with a teammate towards the end of a race like this, because if these two men were on separate teams, there would be a little bit of reticence to work full out, because you would always be thinking about the other man saving a little bit. But at the moment, these two riders, they know that they've got Franco Ballerini at the head of affairs, and they will give 110%, because it doesn't matter which one of them finishes second or which one finishes third. It is a team effort, and they will do everything they can to hold off the group which was behind, starting to come back together a little bit. The two riders from Gan and Rabobank doing most of the work at the front, but nobody is doing anything at all to pull into the advantage that Franco Ballerini has over the field.
Well, Ballerini is 10 kilometres from the finish now, and the chasers are just on 12, so there's almost a 2 kilometre gap between them, and that should do it. But as you say, Paul, Taffy himself was not happy when told he was third finisher in the Mapei team a couple of years back in that 1-2-3. And so I think now the decision will be, those two riders, should they come to the stadium together, is may the best man get second.
Another man not happy with that 1-2-3 Mapei was Gianluca Bortolami. In fact, he left the team at the end of the year and went to ride for the Festina squad, and it certainly was a lot of discussions about whether they should have been forced to sprint it out, but at the end of the day, if they had raced straight, I still think Johan Museeuw would have come out the winner.
I would agree. Museeuw is a brilliant classic rider, and this man is going to be on the par with him now. His first big result came in Paris-Roubaix, really, when he finished 5th in 1991. And since then, he's had a second in 1993, a third in 1994. He won it in 1995. He was 5th in 1996. And now he looks to be back on the winning trail again.
Well, this is the penultimate sections of cobblestones, just outside the town of Hem, and you can see he's keeping away from them as much as he can. I think he's had his fill of cobbles this afternoon, and this in fact is the section of cobblestones where Henny Kuiper nearly lost Paris-Roubaix when he won it. In fact, because when he came to the section, just at the end of the section here, he was flicking across from left to right, as all of these riders do to keep on the smooth pavement, and he just clipped the cobblestone line there, as you can see it, and he ripped his back tyre off, and in fact the tyre got stuck between the frame and the gears, and he was absolutely panic-stricken. So was the mechanic, because the group was only about 20 seconds behind, but fortunately for Henny on that day, they managed to get him a new bike and they managed to get him up and running again, and he went on to win that Paris-Roubaix.
Henny Kuiper, a man who won a lot of good bike races. Never quite won the Tour de France, but 2 second places, and he was the world champion, and he also won an Olympic gold medal in Munich.
Certainly a very long and illustrious career, and if he didn't win too many of the classics, the 4 that he did win were certainly the best ones.
Absolutely. Now, Taffy's won a classic in his life. He's won a couple, actually, as he sits on the back wheel of Wilfred Peters, who is one of the strong men of the Mapei team and rarely gets the result at the end because he works so hard for his squad. Well, today, he's either going to finish second or third in Paris-Roubaix because the group behind is losing ground. They are now 25 seconds behind.
And I would have to say, talking about Wilfred Peters, a lot of people said that Sean Yates was one of the most desired domestiques on the circuit when he was racing. I would think now the man that everybody would like to have in their squad is Wilfred Peters, because that man is certainly worth 2 bike riders, because he's so powerful and so dedicated to the team that he hardly ever thinks about his own performance.
Yes, I couldn't agree more on that score. Around one of the big roundabouts here now. The area, of course, totally closed down for the arrival of Paris-Roubaix, an event which continues to get higher and higher in the public's imagination. First was held back in 1896 when Joseph Fischer of Germany was the winner. In those days, by the way, they used to have bicycle riders as pacemakers. They used to pace the riders and then drop out, and fresh ones would pick up the pacemaking.
That's exactly what Andrea Taffy's doing here to Wilfred Peters. Taffy on the front there with the blue knee warmers, keeping himself warm up against the cold that the riders have had to encounter throughout this afternoon. And you know, they're not actually opening up quite a big gap over the chasing group behind. It's hovering around about the 20 seconds. So despite the fact that they've been sitting on that group for most of the afternoon, there's still a big reaction coming from behind.
That's right, they are not pulling away now. They've got the gap for sure, but they are not pulling away. And if you remember last year, the breakaway that was swept up just out of sight of the cameras as they swung into the stadium, and that's likely to happen again. Wow, and that was nearly down on the ground then for the rider in the front, which was Taffy. It's Peters, wasn't it, at the front?
It certainly was Peters. These two riders very much resemble each other. The speed that they're going over these cobblestones at the moment, it's a question of you go to the front and I go to the front. Everybody sharing the work. They realise, because they can probably hear the crowd a little bit further back cheering on this group, which has the best placed Frenchman in it, Frédéric Moncassin, there in 4th position. So they know that they haven't opened up the gap that they wanted to. And if they don't give everything at the moment, as you said, it could all come back together right to the entrance to the stadium.
Well, Fred has lost the shot of what he always wants, and that was a top 3 finish in Paris-Roubaix. At the moment, it's gone from him. He won't be happy with anything less. And despite the teamwork by his young mate Backstead, well, it's 4 kilometres to go now for Franco Ballerini. And the sun, ironically, is coming out to welcome this man into the stadium. He's now looking for the first time a little bit tired, but he must know that there's nobody going to catch him.
A very tough part of the course here. You think it's flat in the north of France here, but this little climb just outside of Hem is where many riders have launched themselves on their way to victory in Paris-Roubaix, and it is a real sting in the tail. This, in fact, is where Jan Raas blew everybody away when he went to win his Paris-Roubaix, and the last man able to stay with him was Stefan Mutter, and he just kept attacking and attacking till he eventually cracked him. But today, that is not the case for Franco Ballerini. All he has to do is just get to the summit of this climb, and then it's a real coast down to the finish line, and a great crowd waiting for him here in the Velodrome.
Paul's memory going back there to 1982 with Jan Raas, who eventually beat Yvon Bertin in the stadium. And Jan Raas now the manager, or the senior manager indeed, of the Rabobank team. He doesn't take too much of a part in the team cars these days, but he's pulled together a superb sponsorship, not just for pro bike riders, but it goes right down to school kids. Anyway, these two riders now still hovering around about 4¼ minutes behind their team leader on the road, Ballerini, but only about 20-25 seconds ahead of this group here, which is the Gans and Rabobanks versus the Mapei.
Well, it's an amazing race, Phil, because really, if you think about it, over the last hour of this afternoon's race, only 3 teams have got any publicity at all out of Paris-Roubaix. It's been Gan, Rabobank and Mapei. They're the only people we've seen. Franco Ballerini looking a lot more comfortable now, getting himself dressed up for what's going to be a magnificent reception for him as he cruises down off the top of that climb just outside Hem, and he's now in the suburbs of Roubaix.
All of a sudden he feels confident, I think, zipping up his racing top, getting ready for the approach to the stadium. A super crowd here in Hem, and very shortly they'll be down a last small section of cobbles, almost symbolic, about 100 metres of it, in fact 300 metres of it just before the finish, and then he'll be on his way into town.
There's a picture of Dirk de Mol marking the final roundabout before we get into the stadium of Roubaix. De Mol from just over the road here in Kuurne. A great win for him in that year's Paris-Roubaix, but it didn't actually finish here. It finished a few miles away at the offices of La Redoute, the great mail order catalogue that sponsored one of the great teams of the 1980s, which I happened to ride for.
That's right, called La Redoute, I believe. In 1988 was Dirk de Mol's win, and the prize money then was round about $25,000, and pretty similar to what it is today, actually, though it's probably worth a bit more in those days. Anyway, now we're coming towards what will be the kilometre kite very shortly for Franco Ballerini. He will flick off this side of the road. Yes, indeed, he says, and he has deserved this richly today. He'll shortly go into the central reservation and make the last stretch of cobblestones down the middle of the road, and then he'll turn into the stadium, and boy, he'll feel good.
It's almost a smile on his face now. He's been away for about an hour and a half. Quite remarkable. I never thought that a man would try and get away from the rest of the field 60 kilometres from the finish of a race like Paris-Roubaix, but he obviously knew himself. He knew he was in a great day. And besides, he's riding for the #1 team in the world and knew he would get an awful lot of help from his teammates behind.
So Franco Ballerini now on final approach here, heading into what they call the Espace Croupelant, which is the central reservation that they open up just for the arrival of Paris-Roubaix, and where they have laid cobblestones for the riders to race over. There's the switch coming up now. He'll go under that little archway. He knows now nobody is going to touch him. Here we go, and there's the cobblestones, just to remind you that this is Paris-Roubaix approaching its climax yet again. And Franco Ballerini continuing his tremendous list of finishes here in this great race.
Nobody can say that the cobblestones are too far from the finish to affect the event, because they're just around about 200 metres away here from turning into the stadium. Every bike rider knows this finish here. You swing right into the entrance of the stadium, another turn to the left, and one more right-hand turn, and you're actually on the velodrome.
And wait for the roar, because the crowd can see him coming in on the big screen. He's already waving to the handful outside the gates, but inside it's a full house because it's a free spectacle, Paris-Roubaix. And look at this now, Ballerini left himself all the time in the world. The man that came from the back to the front and then left himself with no challengers in the 1998 Paris-Roubaix. And this is going to be a huge winning margin indeed, and the time will prove it, but I think we're going to go back to the halcyon days of Eddy Merckx when anybody has come in with a lead like this. The crowd are cheering him all the way. One lap to go for Franco Ballerini. No Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle to take the prize off him this time. He's going to win it clear on his own, and it looks like, Paul, it's going to be a 1-2-3 as well.
Well, it certainly will. I think if those two riders behind don't ease up over the last few kilometres, they should survive the onslaught of the chasing group. But Franco Ballerini has certainly put in one of the most magnificent performances in Paris-Roubaix over the last few years. To go out 60 kilometres from the finish alone, pick yourself back up from being so far behind in the Forest of Arenberg, that really is a magnificent race.
It was a gamble of which I don't think he had any choice at all. He was so strong when he got there, he had to push it home, and he's done it now brilliantly. Coming round the stadium and doesn't have to worry about a sprint. He looks across to see if anybody else is entering the track, but they're a lap and a half behind anyway if they are. Franco Ballerini gets what I rate as the best win of his career today in Paris-Roubaix. He's going to freewheel right around the back, where by tradition his helpers will be waiting. Back out on the course though, the race now for second and third. Mappé are going to do a 1-2-3 for the second time. They did it before in 1996, and only one rider is in that same 3-up sprint, and that's Andrea Tafi.
On that occasion, he finished third. He was told by the team direction that that was the order they were going to go across the finish line. Johan Museo, Bortolami and Andrea Tafi, but now he's a lot more confident. And in fact, it looks as if he's starting to play a little bit of a tactical game here, because he's forcing Wilfred Peters to make the final few kilometres ride to the section of cobblestones that Franco Ballerini went over just a few moments ago. But it really is a love-hate relationship that Franco Ballerini has had with Paris-Roubaix over these last few years. And you know, rumour has it that in his house he has a huge picture of Paris-Roubaix, and he looks at it every day, and all he thinks about is coming here for that one day in April.
Well, he's going to sleep good tonight, because he's going to have bookends on his sideboard back home now of 2 cobblestones, having won this race twice. Now, these two boys, I'm sure, are going to sprint it out because they've worked so well together. There's no team orders. The best man can get second, and the other one will have to take third. And Tafi, for my bet, is not going to be happy with third, but Peters is a strong finisher.
He certainly is. He's actually won a couple of races in the sprint in the past in his career, but at the moment he's just burying himself. I think he keeps looking over his shoulder because that chasing group with Frédéric Moncassin can't be too far behind. And that, in fact, they've looked back several times now, so if they're not careful, they've got to make sure that they keep the speed high because they can still close it down, because they've got a lap of this track to do once they cross over the finish line, and that is still quite a long way to go before they reach the finish line.
Well, they come into the stadium here. They'll flick right onto the track itself. The showers, by the way, are just on the left there when they finished. And now the riders onto the track, and another enormous cheer from the crowd. As now, what are we going to be treated to here now? Peters or Taffy? Track riders they are not, but they know all about track finishes in Paris-Roubaix. Peters is leading Taffy around, which says to me that Taffy is preparing for something special with 1 lap to go.
Certainly is, and they both look very happy. They're not too worried about second and third place. They know that Mapei has been the dominant team here this afternoon. Wilfred Peters still on the front, riding like a Trojan. He finished first in Wevelgem a couple of years ago, but I think today his performance in Paris-Roubaix will be one that he'll talk about for many years to come. Still, Wilfred Peters on the front, Andrea Taffy in second place, and the other group is coming onto the track right now. And
the gap already is 4 minutes as they start to wind up down the back straight now. Is Taffy going to have a go at Wilfred Peters, or is he going to leave it and just finish third again? There's the chase group. They're on the track as well now. 2 Gans versus 2 Rabobanks, and Backstead leading them out there, but Peters has sort of waved by Taffy. He said to Taffy, I think he's agreed he gets second actually, because he got third last time. Taffy is second, Wilfred Peters is third. The Mapei 1, 2, 3 for the second time in just a couple of years.
Well, they certainly came to this race with a mission. It could well have been first 5 here as they come up to the line. It's going to be a very close sprint.
Moncassin is leading them out. He's not going to be happy at having to sprint for 4th place, but at least he'll want 4th place. But he's going to be challenged on the line, and Leon Van Bon takes it away from him. Van Bon, Moncassin, Sorensen is the order over the line, and the very, very brave Magnus Backstead comes in as well, and the gap is 4 minutes and 50 seconds. So that's a big winning gap for Ballerini. Well, Leon Van Bon, a medalist in the World Championships with his sprint last year, proving to be quite a developing bike rider now.
Certainly is, but look at the joy here. Andrea Taffy, they haven't started the sprint yet for second place, and still Gianluca Bortolami coming up here. A lot of points still at stake.
Well, Bortolami here now sprinting it out, and it looks as though he's going to be pipped right on the line. He is indeed by, I think it was Bart Lazen. Well, a Mapei boy in, and Henk Vogel's in that sprint as well. So Vogel's also got another great result out of this, because he really does like this event. He'll be a little sad to find out what happened to his 2 teammates, but they're right up there. So it looks as though Paul Schoen is now down in the track centre. See if we can find him. Well, it looks as though Henk Vogels is not happy with something. He's crossed the line in 10th place, Henk, which I think is a great performance, but it's not satisfied Vogels today. So let's see if Paul Schoen can find out exactly what was going on down there, because this young man is looking very, very frustrated. It's been a tough, tough day today. It is an event which he really likes, but 10th place on this occasion is not good enough.
Hey, another tough day for the GAN team. And again, the Mapei were the strongest, with Ballerini going away in the final.
Well, I saw Ballerini when I was still with him in the group, and he looked awesome. And so did Fred. But we had big Magnus Backstead there. I thought maybe, but it's a pity to see Fred get beaten. And the best man won, obviously, in Ballerini. I didn't have such a good day, but to finish in the first 10, I'm happy. 3 GAN riders in the first 10, I think that's an effort to be commended. But congratulations, Ballerini. And, well, 3 in the first 10. It won't be a party tonight, but I'm sure it's a great day for GAN anyway.
A really tough Paris-Roubaix today, though. The first time you've ridden it in these kind of conditions, how did it feel?
It sucked. It was really bad. I had back wheel slide, front wheel slide. Tristan Hoffman brought me down with 40k to go, and I finished, fell on my face. Took me 10 kilometres to get back. When I got back, I was knackered, but not to take away from the first 6 guys, they were strong, but I'm still happy.
Henk Vogel's telling us there how it was, but what about Magnus Backstead? I bet he's happy.
Magnus, that was your first experience with Paris-Roubaix today. It's really something special.
Marvelous. I love this race. This is, yeah, I'm going to dedicate my life to this race, definitely.
It was very tough, though, because you had a lot of GAN riders up there, but Mapei managed to work you over.
Yeah, they were too strong today. We couldn't do anything, actually. It's just Ballerini just rode away from me. I was sitting on his wheel and he just rode away from me after a corner. It was a bit slippery. And, yeah, that was it. And then they had Wilfried Peters and Tafi sitting on his wheel. So
I spoke to Henk Vogels after the finish, and he was devastated that Frederik Moncassin hadn't won. He thought that Fred was in a great day.
Fred looked pretty good, but I don't know what happened. He just didn't get around good enough for the on the stones. But I mean, it's a hard race. It's a lot of, you got to have a lot of luck just to be in the right place at the right time, and yeah, it's just a lot of luck and a lot of experience to be able to do this.
You also have to be very strong as well, and you showed today that you're an exceptionally strong man when it comes to riding this kind of race.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of good on flat riding, but I had a good day today, and I wanted to give Fred a chance to be up there for the win, and yeah, I tried my best, but I wasn't good enough today. But
happy with the top 10 place?
Definitely, this is more than I expected.
Well, a great ride it was too. In fact, Magnus taking 7th place in the end in his first Paris-Roubaix. And 24th it was for Tom Steels. But what about Wilfried Peters?
A great demonstration by the Mapei team today.
Yeah, today was same like 2 years before. I'm happy now in the first 3 places.
It seemed very sad actually at the end of the Arenberg Forest, because everyone was talking about Johan Museeuw. He went down with a crash, and then Zanini, and everyone thought that it was over for Mapei.
Yeah, we have very strong riders for this race. Every 8 the coming to the start was strong, and we lose in the Bosphore-Valairs 2 best riders. We have also 6 other riders, and you see it in the finish.
Is it very special for a rider like you to come onto the stadium here, knowing that one of your teammates has already won the race?
Yeah, I was happy now when Ballerini was going, and me and Tafi was for 2nd and 3rd place, and you see the people here, it's unbelievable.
It was a Saturday though for George Hincapie.
George, it was a tough day for everybody out there in the forest today, and you looked very comfortable coming out of there.
Yeah, I was good in the beginning, first couple of sections, but after the forest I was in a break for a little while, and after that I just couldn't really recover, and I had bad legs after that. I don't know what was wrong, but I just didn't have it today.
It was a tough day for everybody, and even the Mapei lost most of their riders in the forest there. It seemed like absolute chaos.
Yeah, it was really hard. I just couldn't recover after the forest. You know, I was completely dead. I mean, completely dead. Last 100 kilometers took everything I had just to get to the finish. But another Roubaix.
A disappointed George Hincapie, who finished 66 with the scars of the battle there. What about Frankie Andreu?
Frankie, that was a hell of a Paris-Roubaix today, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just all out hard. I mean, I didn't have the great legs today, and today, I mean, any classic you got to have good legs to be able to do something, but it was just so slippery and muddy, and I mean, I crashed 3 or 4 times and flatted a couple times, but I probably was staying on the bike. It was one to remember, I guess.
Both you and George both looked very comfortable in the early sections of cobblestones. You were riding near the front, and it seemed to come apart towards the end.
Yeah, the critical part was the forest, and I mean, I could tell I was suffering a bit in the first part, and I knew it was going to be a long day. And then after the forest, I was just going and going and going, and it was too much. You know, I started wearing down. I couldn't stand the wheels anymore. And then George, yeah, ended up having some bad legs later on also. And so in the last sections, he was really, so I stopped. I waited for him so we could come in together, because it would have been a long day. But it was, I mean, yeah,
it's a tough race.
Surprised I finished.
It's a tough race, it always is. And what about that performance by Franco Ballerini, winning by 4 minutes?
Well, I mean, the way the conditions were, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's like if you could get off the front and just ride, the guys in the back can only go the same pace as the guy in the front, because you go any quicker, you're going to fall off. I mean, a lot of times when you hit the big mud sections, you just have to coast through them. You couldn't pedal because it was too slippery. So, I mean, Ballerini's a strong guy, and I mean, you had to be strong to win, but time gap, not that big a deal. I mean, once you got the gap, you can only go so fast, because it was deadly.
Deadly it was, but this man has a much nicer story to tell. Franco Ballerini winning again at the Paris-Roubaix. He's done it twice now. He's going to remember this one because his winning margin was the biggest since Eddie Merckx won this event ahead of Roger de Vlaming back in 1970. So the Italian really did put an image on the Paris-Roubaix this year, and I hope you've enjoyed this coverage of what has been a real classic in the making. He then had time to stop and see his teammates race home, Andrea Taffy getting second and Wilfred Peters taking the third place. A Mappy 1-2-3 on a day in the very early stages. They lost their two top men, supposedly so, Johan Museo and Zanini. This was the official result. The time for Ballerini just inside 7 hours, 6 hours, 55 minutes and 16 seconds. It wasn't a record. His average speed, a mere 38.5 kilometres an hour. That's 24 miles an hour over roads like we've seen over the last couple of hours of this videotape. We'll leave you now with some images of one of the great classics that we all had the pleasure to witness. For Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye. twice. So he certainly knows this race inside out.
Two Mappe boys on the back of that group there looking happy. But this is it. Look at that. Franco Ballerini has dropped Ludo Dieriksen on this very long...
Hoping that they might be welcoming the first ever American to win the event, George Hincapie. On 3 occasions he's made a top 6 finish, twice 4th, once in 6th position. He's absolutely flying after a marvellous week's racing here in Europe. Well, as usual, Paul Sherwin is in amongst the riders in the square here in Compiègne, so let's catch up with him first.
You had a pretty strange accident this year. You crashed while you were out training.
Yeah, that's right. Last Thursday I was training just easy after Gent-Wevelgem. And then there was a big group of, how do you say it, school guys who were coming from the other side and didn't watch out, and we hit each other.
Was there any worry that you might not be able to ride Paris-Roubaix?
In the beginning I was worried, but later I went to the hospital, took some pictures, and there was nothing broken. So then I said, yeah, for sure I'm going to start, and then we'll see how it's going.
How's the team today? Because it's always Domo Farm Frites last year totally dominated.
Yeah, that's right. But this year is another year, and I think we have a strong team, but maybe not favorite for the victory. But with Hincapie and Van Petegem, Tafi, yeah, there are a lot of guys who have maybe better chances to win. But if we are strong with the whole team, we can maybe we can get the victory also. Okay, thanks.
Bit cold this morning, Matty.
Yeah, but the weather's clear. So I heard it's been raining last night, and it's still raining now in the final sectors, but we've got a good start today, and it's a lot better than last year anyway.
Georgie seems to be in pretty good shape. Is he accepting the support of the leader of the team, or is the pressure just a little bit too much?
No, I think George has been in this position a few times now, and we didn't give him the help that he deserved last year in Paris-Roubaix. We had a lot of accidents, a little bad luck, but if we can have a minimum bad luck and a little bit of good luck, it's going to be a good day for us. George has certainly got the form to win the race today. No worries.
Georgie, the big day. You always get excited for Paris-Roubaix. This week has been perfect preparation. Tour of Flanders was good, Gent-Wevelgem was good, but for you, this is the big one.
Yeah, this is the race that I trained for all winter and all season. So I'm definitely excited, and I feel good, and I hope for the best.
I believe that you and Lance had a look at some videos this week of the results of Tour of Flanders.
Yeah, Lance and I watched the video of Tour of Flanders, and he had a lot of good things to say, and he gave me a lot of insight as to what makes him what he is.
He's a special guy to have as a teammate, and today if you can win, you feel as if he will be pushing you along just a little bit, even though he's in the United States?
He's in the U.S., but I know that he's thinking about me, and he'll probably be on the phone with me as soon as the race is over, so I know that he's there with me, and so is the rest of the team. The team's riding great. I got my family here and a lot of my friends at home watching, so it's a big day, and I hope to do well.
The weather is absolutely superb right now. Are you a little bit upset that maybe it's not wet and muddy, or is it all the same for you?
Well, the weather would probably be the same for me either way, but the dry conditions is better for my team, so it'll probably be better for me in the end. Thank you.
Derek, I know you must be nervous today because it's a very important day for United States Postal Service team, but as an ex-winner of Paris-Roubaix, you must also get pretty excited when you come back to this race.
Yeah, always it gives a good feeling if they come back here and Compiègne, a star place. So if it's a special race, a special place to remember. For me, it's my biggest souvenir of my whole career. So I'm always excited to come back here.
You'd like to see George Hincapie win today. Everything's been perfect. Flanders was good. Gent-Wevelgem. He doesn't right now seem to have any problems.
Yeah, he works the whole winter actually for this day. So what we saw when the races were past, he showed that he's right on schedule. He's in his top shape. The team is going a lot better than last year. So I think he's ready. We are ready, and we go for it.
So you've been over to this race several times before. This time you have a good feeling for George?
I hope today's gonna be the day.
The weather's superb at the moment. I asked Georgie, he doesn't care whether it's wet or dry. Everything seems to be spot on.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day. hopefully it's better for the race, and I hope he'll be up front.
It must be a dream for you, because you started life off as a cyclist and then Georgie's followed in your footsteps. But could you ever imagine that Georgie would be a big favourite for Paris-Roubaix?
Well, when he was younger, he used to do very good in the races, but I never thought that this was going to be possible. Now I'm very happy because of it.
And a little bit nervous today?
Oh yes, I am. Thanks, Wall.
Well, Stefan, last year was a pretty tough ride in Paris-Roubaix for you. You had a little problem with your pedals. Everything okay today?
It was a cleat problem, and this year we fixed everything, I hope. And but everything is possible on the Paris-Roubaix.
It's a kind of race that you and the team are super motivated for, but the team gives you a lot of liberty to ride your own race today.
Yeah, for sure. So Eric and I, we have the same point in the team, and we see what's in the final. Okay, when we're in the final, the last 2 kilometers, and Eric is with me, so I want to do the sprint for Eric, but today it's 260 kilometers, and we see what happened in the race.
What specifically motivates you about Paris-Roubaix, because it is a very special race?
Yes, I didn't win the Tour de France, but Paris-Roubaix, I feel I can win it. So I have to be here, and I have to be with a good morale and with a good form. Yeah, that's it.
And the weather helps a bit?
For me, it's the same as rain or sun. No difference. Thank you.
Is the bike ready?
Johan, the team seems to be in perfect condition today. A little bit of a worry maybe in the week with the crash of Servais Carnarvon, because your team always seems to rely on the strength in numbers.
Friday or Tuesday with Servais has a crash, but I think it's going to be not so hard as we think. So he is on the start, and his condition is good, but the condition from the team is from everybody good, but we don't have the same strongest team as last year, so we have to be another tactic.
I see Wilfred Peters is in the team car today. Is that going to be a bit strange for you to see him on that side of the race?
Not only today, but the whole year. It's different for me. Normally he's in my room and on my side with the bicycle, but now he's backwards in the car.
Johan, your form is always good. You're still very strong. Are you seriously going to retire at the end of this year, or will we see you maybe one more time in the Ronde van Vlaanderen?
We shall see. The museum is always full of surprises.
Thanks.
You are not Français?
Peter, last week was Tour of Flanders. The form was good. How's this week been preparing for Paris-Roubaix?
I did Gent-Wevelgem for training, and then Thursday we did the last 100 kilometers from Paris-Roubaix. Then always resting.
Is your motivation for Paris-Roubaix the same as it is for Tour of Flanders? It's one of the big classics, but maybe Flanders you feel a little bit more obliged to win because you're Belgian.
Yeah, but I think Roubaix is almost Belgium also, so Tour of Flanders is, I like more the cobbles and the hills, but I like also Paris-Roubaix.
You seem very motivated, very relaxed. I tried to talk to Johan Museo this morning and he's just locked in the car, not talking to anybody.
Yeah, I'm not so stressed, and for me I'm good, so I'm more stressed when the condition is not good. So I will see when I have not a lot of problems. Normally I must have a good race. Okay.
Thank you. Well, Freddie, right now you're in third place in the World Cup. Are you going to try and go for points today, or are your responsibilities a little bit more with the team and Johan Museo?
Well, my responsibilities are pretty much to be there at the finale. You know, Johan's riding incredibly well. I'm riding well. Servats is riding well. I think with the whole team, as long as we have the numbers there, I think I'll still be able to get points. And who knows? You know, it's my first Roubaix, but I think I have really good legs. Pavé seems to suit me well, and you never know. I mean, I could win the race.
Carnarvon had a very strange accident this week. Was there a worry that he might not start?
No, not at all. I mean, the accident was just more bruises and everything else. Just, you know, it just threw him off one day of training, but not much.
Dreams of winning today?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of my biggest dreams in my cycling career, and it's my first one, so I come in with the best form I've had in a long time, so you never know. I mean, yeah, I do have dreams.
Well, Max, round once again to the Classics and Paris-Roubaix, a race that you've always fancied that you've got a chance of winning.
Yeah, again, I'm here. Good condition, good morale. I don't want to say the same things as every year, but you know, it's such a difficult race. You need so much luck, but I feel really good today. I hope at least in 14 years it could be my day.
You've got a good team around you. Dirksen seems to be riding well. He had a bit of bad luck in the Tour of Flanders. 12 months ago, the two of you worked very well in the Classics.
Yeah, we had a good Classic in Tour of Flanders and Roubaix, and you know, the morale is still good. The condition's really good. It's a good day today. I mean, I didn't mind rain I don't mind anything. It's just Paris-Roubaix, Paris-Roubaix. But all I need is a bit of luck. That's all I'm asking for today.
That's the thing about Paris-Roubaix. It's not really good luck. It's just not having bad luck.
Yeah, just gunning over the first few sections, 3 or 4 sections with no inconvenience. You know, no flats, no crashes, no nothing. So it's all energies you keep for the end. You know, otherwise you're kind of catching up all the time. You know, at the first sections. So you know, just get over the first 3 or 4 sections of Pavé in good health with a good bike, and then we'll see.
Luda, a brilliant day today for Paris-Roubaix. Your teammate Max Chandry seems to be in good form. You two had a little bit of bad luck last week in the Tour of Flanders, but today's another day.
Yeah, today is another day. It's a beautiful day, but too beautiful perhaps. No, last year it was the weather was bad and the roads were very bad. But this year I think there are some more races who want to win.
But you just love the cobblestones. We've seen you in the Tour of Flanders, we've seen you in Paris-Roubaix. Once you get to the cobblestones, you have to give it full gas.
Yeah, it's I love the cobblestones, and one time I want to win Paris-Roubaix, and I try to do it, and yeah, we'll see today. I try it.
Well, we hope you win, because we're in the same hotel as you tonight. Maybe we have a big celebration.
Oh yeah, why not?
Okay, thanks. Excuse me. Pass up. Hey, Robbie, the spirits seem pretty good this morning.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, my form's been good up until now. Had a good race in Flanders and Wevelgem, so you know, obviously motivated for today.
Andrea Taffy, since winning last week in the Tour of Flanders, seems to have had a pretty low-key week.
Yeah, he has. But I think Andrea is a lot more motivated than he was before Flanders. He wasn't expecting to ride that well in Flanders. Obviously, then winning it, it's obviously upped his morale a lot more as well for today. So he's confident, and obviously with the team that we've got here, the team's really expecting good results.
Last year, Mappé had a pretty bad time in Paris-Roubaix. It's a race that the team has always been super motivated for. Everybody in form now?
Yeah, everybody's in form, and apart from that, you know, the team's getting on well, which I think last year the team was lacking a bit. There was, you know, I think maybe too many captains and a bit of conflict in the team. This year we know what we've got to do, and I think the results will come. Thanks, Paul.
Sono 3 bici uguali al fianco. La moglie dov'è? Identica la bici. I bambini. Uguale, la stessa. I bambini. Cambia solamente la carta. E il fax? Già fatto.
Well, Andrea Taffy, a very popular man at the start of Paris-Roubaix. But today, Andrea, today's a big day for you. Paris-Roubaix, maybe you're just a little bit more relaxed after your win last week in the Tour of Flanders. I'm very happy, actually, to have won last week in Tour of Flanders. But I would be even happier because today's one of the races that I really love the most. I'd really hope today that I've got a good race. Your team also is very strong. You've got Zanini, Narnedo, and even the young South African, Robbie Hunter.
Yes,
the whole team are riding very well, very strong at the moment. This year, I think for us that's quite important. For me personally, today there are two objectives. First of all is to win the race, and secondly is of course I'm thinking about the World Cup.
C'est double fatigué, mais allez, ça va. Merci.
Go, you slowpoke.
Oh, come on, Joe, this is a joke, man. I've never been so late getting away from Paris-Roubaix before. It's going to be a great start. All the big guys are here. A big surprise to see Servais Knaven, but, you know, that's Paris-Roubaix.
Well, the ride is now well into the saddle of 100th at Paris-Roubaix, and as you can see, it was only around 50 degrees Fahrenheit at the start. It's not a lot warmer now, some 100 kilometres down the road. The rider's bound for the cobblestones, and it's nice to see, Paul, US Postal have got themselves right on the front of the peloton to start with.
Well, I think they're completely dedicated to the victory today of George Hincapie. Hincapie in great shape, but there is this very early morning breakaway. Right in the middle of the screen there is Robbie Hunter, the South African. He was very relaxed at the start this morning, Phil, and I think today he will be very happy with the situation that he's managed to get himself in that early season breakaway. Tristan Hoffman in there as well, Tom Boonen, the man from Belgium, the young star on the US Postal Service team coming forward. This is a very large group right now, Phil. There are still 19 sections of cobblestones to go, and that's almost 25 miles of those very bad and treacherous roads.
Well, as always, a lot of sections of cobblestones to be conquered, and they come in stretches. As we see the banners coming at us, there's one in the distance there. It counts down from 26 to 0. And the peloton here under the tempo and the command of George Hincapie, because although they've got Tommy Boonen in the breakaway, he's not the man, of course, that is expected to win this race. He's the early season pacemaker for the team. And the cobbles, well, they're probably turning in favour of Ludo Dirksen's here, because they are a lot wetter than I think any of them expected them to be today.
Well, it's a big shock, you know. This rain has come down from Holland and Belgium in the last couple of hours. Most of these riders will have ridden this course, Phil, over the last week, just looking at these cobblestones, and they will have found them completely dry. But very often when the rain comes in at the last moment like this, it makes it so much worse because it makes them very slippery.
Now some hard working being done here. We're now at Maine, 2.5 kilometres of cobblestones here, Pavé sector 9. As we're looking here at Enrico Cassani. Unusual to see a man like Cassani riding so well, but he's proved to be quite a driving power in this breakaway today. Hunter there, taking the rest of the line down the centre of the cobblestones. You've got two places to ride, really, on the edges or on the centre. They are, if anything, the safest sector.
It's great to see Robbie Hunter on the front of this main field as well, Phil. I think a lot more happy now that he's left the Lampre team and come along to this huge big squad of Team Mapei, and he slipped into the role of assistant leader very easily, I think, with his very great start to the season in the Tour de Langkawi.
A chance to see all of the breakaway down there now. A very interesting move, quite a big move this for this stage of the race, as Robbie Hunter has put himself in a very strong position. Now this is a race he is expected by his team to ride pretty well in. Looking down there, the Lotto rider is Hans de Klerk in the red jersey, about 4 men down in the line just now. There's 123 kilometres already covered today of the 256, and Hunter looking as though he just can't be tamed at all today, Paul. He just wants to get this race going.
Well, this is a good move for these guys. They got away in the habitual early morning breakaway of Paris-Roubaix, but the fact is this is a very large group, and because it's such a large group, we could in fact see a surprise in Paris-Roubaix today, and this group actually surviving to the finish, which is why they're riding so hard just now. They want to try and blow this group apart, because obviously with such a large group, Phil, there are so many riders who will sit on the back. One team who've done very well here, in fact, is the small French team. There you can see Big Matt Aubervilliers. They've actually got 4 riders in this leading group.
Well, there's Cassani on the left. He has a teammate up here as well in Maxi van Heeswijk. Let me just tell you how this breakaway got away at about 144 kilometres from the finish before they got to the first feed at Solem. Cassani, Van Heeswijk, both Domo, Bedrogi of Mappe, Hans de Klerk Lotto, Raphael Schweder of the Team Coast, Tristan Hoffman of Team CSC, Tom Boonen of US Postal. They were the men who set up the action. They've since now been joined by the rest of this breakaway, and it looks to me as though this is a very interesting move here, starting so far out with some good riders in it before we get to the forest itself.
Well, Domo Farm Fritz with the winner from last year, Servais Carnarvon, on the start line, I think we'll be very happy with this situation, Phil, as